Okay, good morning YouTubers. I've been asked by one of the subscribers to comment on a plane crash. So I've looked into it. I've not got the accident investigation report, but I've just found this is obviously the one that the guy was talking about. I'm assuming it's a guy, might be a lady, I don't know, do apologise. But it's in the Belfast Telegraph, and I'll put a link to it below so you can see. I've literally just read this article, and it's a Reims Cessna 150. Reims is actually French, I think. The standard Cessna was just the Cessna, and the Reims Cessna was one that was built in France, I think, or modified in France. Reims is a company in France that used to soup up and make a much better version of the aircraft. Modified. The Reims rocket, Cessna 172 Reims rocket, were always like well sought after, much more valuable than the standard 172, for example, that I used to fly. Now the Cessna 150, I used to have them in my flying club on the 152, the very similar thing. And they're one of the best little training aircraft for beginners. You know, when you start as a student pilot and you're taken up, it's usually in a 150, well it was in my day, in the 150 or the 152, and they've got fabulous undercarriage on them. They're super safe to fly, they really are, and it's a little two-seater. And the undercarriage is designed to bounce, because when you're learning to land, okay, you're going to bounce, and you're going to bounce, and you're going to bounce down that runway. That's what student pilots do. This is why they have aeroplanes that are designed for that. They're not going to get damaged, really. Bouncing, okay, they're just designed to bounce, and they're a great aeroplane, they really are. So a Reims version, it's a 150H, I think. Reims version of it would be a better version, I think. And they did the Aerobat as well, which was another good one. Not a standard production version, but they were beefed up a bit. Anyway, this one is in Ireland somewhere, and I've just made a few notes here. Engine failed on takeoff. Instructor and a student. Engine failed on takeoff and it crashed, and both people on board died. Very tragic and completely unnecessary, I must hasten to add at this point, because that is one of the safest aeroplanes ever, and if the engine fails on that, chances are you can glide it down and land it safely, okay, unless you really mess it up, or you've got nowhere to land. I mean, you've got to be really, really unlucky, I think, to die in a Cessna 150. You really have. If you're landing on uneven surface, I hate that. Flies come and land. One of the irritating things with Spanish flies, they keep coming back and landing in the same place. Anyway, I'll leave that bit in. What was I saying? Yeah. You've got to be really unlucky. I have known of students having to put these things down in fields, and they have turned over because they dig the nose wheel in, and if it's uneven ground, but you can stall these things in, you know, you can really, really hold them off. So by the time they're touching down, they're doing very little speed at all. Very tragic that both people died. Now, reading on, 2 fatalities, instructor fatigue. They believe the instructor was fatigued flying. Well, you can have long days as a flying instructor. I used to pay my flying instructors about £15 an hour, and I'm going back to just before millennium. So I'm going back 25 years. Obviously, you get paid a lot more than that now, but that was the going rate at the time. So, you know, these guys, flying instructors at this level, are usually wanting to be commercial pilots or go on into the airlines, but they have to build up so many hours in order to qualify. I think for an ATPL, which is an airline transport pilot's license, I recall you needed 1,500 hours. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's in the region of 1,500 hours, and you can do all the exams in the meantime, and if you pass all the exams and qualify, you get what's known as a frozen ATPL, which means that it doesn't become an ATPL until you've got 1,500 hours. So they're hour building as an instructor. It's a good way to do it, because every time you're going up, and so this article has said that they believe that the instructor was fatigued, so he was quite tired, which is possible because these guys, you know, they do work hard to get their qualifications. If that was the route that he was going on, I don't know. I don't know any of these people. I'm not. It's literally just read this one article from the Belfast Telegraph, and it is dated Tuesday the 29th of October 2013. So it's a 10-year-old one. So the fatigue is definitely an aspect. You know, you make mistakes when you're fatigued. You should never fly when you're fatigued. I've done it even in the flight simulator from VR. I've done lots of low flying and I've been fatigued. I've been nodding. I've been wanting to just get go and land, and that's when you make mistakes and you'll crash and you'll die for sure. Never fly when you're fatigued. You shouldn't do it. Okay. You haven't got a tachograph in a plane, anything like that. You know, it's. So the guy could have done a lot of hours and been quite tired and forgot to check his fuel. Now, these planes are very, very reliable. You know, the engines very, very rarely have a problem. They don't just stop, okay? If you don't put fuel in them, right, they will stop. It doesn't matter. Any car you've got, you know, I went to a breakdown in a car once, and there was a woman in a brand new Mercedes, and it stopped. You know, and my diagnosis was that she'd run out of fuel. She said it shouldn't break down, it's brand new. And the fuel gauge was on 0 and the light was on, and I said to her, well, doesn't matter how much you paid for the car, if you don't put fuel in it, it will not run. And you don't have to be a genius to work that one out, do you? So, from what I've read from this article, like I said, I've not read the accidents investigation report. I don't even have the registration number. I've got a picture of it upside down, all bent and twisted and looking very sad. But the nub of it seems to be that it ran out of fuel, and it had, on takeoff, and it had 9.6 litres of fuel left in the tank. Now, you've got usable fuel in an aircraft, and you've got what we call unusable fuel in an aircraft, because like any tank, any fuel tank, if that's a fuel tank, there's a pipe in the bottom, isn't there, that drains the fuel. So you can see that if the pipe was in the bottom of that glass, that would pretty much use all the fuel. But if the thing's climbing, all the fuel is going to run to the back of the tank, and it's going to not be on the pickup pipe, you see, because the fuel tanks on aeroplanes are in the wings, and the Cessna 150, you've got one on each side, one on each wing. So if you're getting really low on fuel and you're climbing, all the fuel runs to the back, and then you start sucking air. Once the air hits the carburetor, it's going to stop, because aeroplanes don't run on fresh air. Then it appears that he's done a dead man's turn. So depending on how high you were when the engine stopped, dictates whether you turn back to the airfield or not. But you've got to get the nose down. I've done this. If you look back a few of my videos, you'll see I did one in the Chipmunk. If you've got sufficient altitude, you can get the nose down. Okay, that's the first thing you do, is get the nose down. You must maintain airspeed. And then if you're high enough, you can turn it. Okay, but in student world, the flying instructor student world, you do not turn the aircraft around unless you've got sufficient height. You never even attempt it, okay? You're looking at 45 degrees either side of your heading, and all you've got to do is put the nose down to maintain 70 knots, which is flying speed. You don't want to be below that, because that's the danger zone, you know, and they seem to think that this guy put the nose down, tried to turn the aircraft, and it just lost flying speed and stalled in. I don't know. Looking at the crash, it's very difficult to tell from that one photograph what happened, but it's not good. It's not good. So basically, what you do is you lower the nose, maintain airspeed, 45 degrees either side of your heading, and you're looking for somewhere to land that aeroplane. You might not have anywhere. But if you have got anywhere at the end of the runway, which is, there's normally fields, you know, you don't normally have big buildings at the end of runways, although there might be that might be the case in some places. But you're looking for somewhere to land, and then you would bring the aircraft in. When you're really, really low, you can raise the nose up, raise the nose up, raise the nose up, and that's reducing all the airspeed, reducing it to a maximum, and the stall warner will come on. But you've only got a foot to fall at this stage, and it will stall onto the ground, and then if it's rough terrain, the nose wheel will dig in, and the thing will go over on its nose. If it's smooth, obviously you can bounce to a bit of a halt, but you should not die in a Cessna 150. That's my opinion on this crash. You've got to be really, really unlucky, or the pilot wasn't awake really, or doing the right things for sure. Because the most important thing when you're a pilot is you must never, ever, ever, and I mean ever, run out of fuel. Okay, that is, you are an idiot. Okay, and if you ever run out of fuel, it's because you're an idiot. So that's the one thing that they drum into you from a very, very early stage, is never, ever, ever run out of fuel. The stuff I used to fly would burn 30 litres of fuel an hour. So if I'm going up for half an hour, I'll put 30. I'm not sure, because you're looking into a tank, you don't always fill them up. Because you fill them up, they're quite heavy, and it costs a lot of money. So if I'm going flying for an hour, I'll put 30 litres of fuel in that aircraft before I go, because I'm only going to burn half of that. Okay, so you've got twice as much as you need, but you still haven't filled it up. But this guy's taken off with empty tanks with a student in. So because I haven't read the crash report, which I will, I'll go on to read the crash report, Air Accidents Investigation Branch, but I think this is registered in Southern Ireland by the looks of it. I can't quite make out the registration number, but you never, ever, 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 ever run out of fuel. You must, and all it takes is to climb up and look, take the cap off and look in, you know. And if you're a flying instructor, especially, I mean, that's double embarrassing. And then you kill your student and yourself because you didn't check the fuel. Maybe you were tired, maybe he was tired. That's the only logical explanation I can come up with, is that the guy was tired, because the other alternative is he was just lazy and didn't bother to check it, and I don't believe that's the case with a flying instructor. But being tired would mean he probably made that mistake, but it's just really tragic. And again, actions, what do you do? It's said in the article here, it's against club rules to do the dead man's turn. Well, there's a reason it's called the dead man's turn, isn't there? You can practice the dead man's turn in the simulator, and I have developed a technique, and if you go right back in my videos, you'll see I've been doing I did a whole series on the dead man's turn, and there are ways that you can do it, and I've demonstrated them. But unless you know what I'm talking about, you know, it's just going to go over your head. But when we're taking off with a student, obviously the airplane is going to perform better when there's less weight, less in the fuel, than when it's full. Because if it's full, it's going to be heavy, it's going to take a lot longer down the runway to take off, and one thing or another. So there's benefits to having less fuel in, but you must have sufficient fuel to last your journey. And because he's going round in the circuit and landing and powering up and going around and landing again, you're going to use more fuel than just cruising along if you're going somewhere doing a cross country. So it looks like, and this is only based on this article, because I've got no further information on it at all, and I will go and look at the EI-AST report, but it looks like the guy took off with insufficient fuel, which caused the engine to fail, because there was nothing wrong with the aeroplane other than didn't have any fuel. I mean, your car, as I said before, any car will stop if it runs out of fuel. It's obvious, isn't it? So that was the first mistake. Didn't put any fuel in it before he took off. And when it did pack up, he didn't do the correct actions, which are nose down, do not turn more than 45 degrees, depending on your altitude at the time of the failure. If you're nice and high, it doesn't matter, you can turn around if you want, but if you're too low, you haven't got sufficient altitude to make the dead man's turn. So it looks like pilot error in this case, but like I said, that's just based on one newspaper article, so from what I've read there. Didn't put fuel in, didn't do the correct drills for engine failure on takeoff, because that's the most dangerous part of a flight, is the takeoff. People think, oh, the landing. Yeah, well, the landing is important for sure, but landing is a lot easier, trust me, than the takeoff. The takeoff, your aeroplane is in a lot more danger. Okay, I always, when I'm coming into land, I always glide all the way in if I can, because I'm practicing engine failure and landing, and sometimes I have to put a bit more power on. You know, I don't get it quite right, but the engine's there, isn't it? So you're practicing engine off landings all the time. But takeoff is another matter. You've got to climb at a certain speed. Don't forget that a Cessna 150's got a very small little engine in there. It's not got a lot of power. And if you're big stocky guys and you've got full tanks, that plane's going to struggle to climb. It's going to take a long time to get to 1,000 feet. They normally climb to 500 feet, do a 90-degree turn left or right, and then climb to 1,000, and then turn downwind and go back down the circuit, down the runway to the landing end. So very unfortunate state of affairs, and not what you would expect from a flying instructor, for sure. A flying instructor should be switched on. Should never ever have made the mistake of taking off without any fuel. Thanks for watching.